Welcome to the Recruitment Equation, the no-nonsense podcast where we get real about what it takes to succeed in talent acquisition. We're diving into the world of recruitment, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. From innovative strategies to unfiltered conversations with industry leaders, we're here to give you the insights you need to elevate the way you attract and hire. This episode is supported by Beyond Talents and Develop Diverse, your partner for future-proof talent attraction. Let's get started. Wonderful. Welcome. We have another great episode ready and planned for today. We have the Recruitment Equation, and today we have another guest, and one more than we usually have. We have two guests here. Of course, I have my wonderful co-host, Nicklas.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Nicklas.
You too.
As always. My name is Byriel, and today we have you, Ricki.
Yeah.
And you, Ole. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could spend a whole lot of time because I actually do know both of you fairly well, I would say. I feel very lucky about that. So I could spend a whole lot of time introducing the both of you, one at a time, but I'm not going to. I'm actually going to give you the chance once here to actually introduce yourselves. So Ricki, we'll actually start with you because today we're going to talk about job ads.
Yeah.
And it can seem very niche, but it's, as we will also talk about today, it's a big foundation for recruitment for many people. Everyone listening will have some relationship, good or bad, somewhere in between, to job adverts, and they might even call them something else. But Ricki, you literally wrote a whole book in Danish.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to translate into juggling many tasks. Do you have a better translation for yourself?
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
But the name in Danish is mange bolde i luften.
Yes.
So, who are you? How did you get started with job ads? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Very brief. I used to work at the Saxo Bank many years ago, and we hired like 50 people a month. And at that point, there was something about the whole recruitment that I found very exciting. So I actually started helping out. It was just after the financial crisis, helping people who are looking for jobs. And the biggest challenge in getting a job or getting things to get the recruitment equation to go up is actually to write a job ad or tell people what are they actually going to do. So I really helped a lot of people trying to figure out what's actually in the job ads. And now I spend most of my time helping companies actually write job ads that are very clear on what are the main tasks.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I think many companies could use that.
Yeah.
Ole, I got to know you when you were heading up talent acquisition function at Danske Bank. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you... Now you also have some initiative with job ads going on, and you work with for many years. So who are you, and how did you get into?
I think the short version is that I'm a complete nerd, and I've worked in and around talent acquisition and employer branding for 20 plus years by now. My first step into that was working as a copywriter in the advertising industry. And this is where I started developing an interest in recruitment advertising, employer branding. I did that for a number of years and moved into corporate HR, worked in Danske Bank for a number of years in different leadership expert positions, including building and leading talent acquisition. For the past 3 years, I've worked as an independent consultant also in employer branding and talent acquisition. Education-wise, I have a degree in history and American studies. So I think as many of your previous guests, I'm one of those outliers who have worked my way into talent acquisition and employer branding from a completely different background.
Very interesting. I think between the two of you, you represent a lot of knowledge, a lot of whether you call it being a nerd or a lot of practice, a lot of theory here. Why is job ads so important?
I'm going to start with a cliche, even though I hate it. It's the foundation of the house. You can't build a house, you don't have the foundation. I'm surprised how many companies that would actually give someone between 500,000 and 1 million Danish kroner a year And when they hire them, they have no clue what are they going to do and how will they measure it. So that's why the job ad is important. It's because too many companies and too many people starts in job where they don't have a clue what they're going to do. They have an overall, this is probably something like this I'm going to do. They don't have a target. They don't have a goal. Not that everything has to be measured, but just an idea of a clear direction. I'm so impressed that more companies, that they don't spend more time on this, because this is the basics. If you don't know what someone is going to do in the job, it's very hard for the person that gets the job to perform, and it's kind of hard to make the whole thing go up. So I'm just surprised that no one is spending more time on this. But I think it's we'll talk a lot more about it. But there's no prestige in working with job ads. So there's no, if you go to the board of directors, if you go to top managers and say, okay, we just spent 200,000 on job ads, might fire you. But if you come and say, okay, we just spent 2 million on a website that has to do something with all the fancy thing that we do at the moment inside recruitment, then they'll say, oh, that's good. But there's no prestige in job ads at all.
But it's actually funny you say that, Ricki, because a lot of companies would say we've just spent 200,000 on job ads. It's just so funny that because they do spend that money, because when they put it on LinkedIn or on Job Index, it costs money to put that product out there.
Yeah.
So why do you think that it's not more important to them that the things that actually cost money, the job ad itself, is not optimized to create the best results?
No prestige. If you could say, okay, we just build an employer branding website for 2 million, you would have a case. And if right now you need to do something with AI, so do something with AI, spend a couple of millions on that. Maybe it's just 100,000, I don't know. But prestige. Saying that you work with job ads, someone will look at you and say, that's the basics. You don't know your basics. So there's no prestige. And I also think in what I just mentioned here is a lot of people are scared to say, we don't know how to actually write the job ads. So you can be very professional HR people, or whatever we call them at the moment, people in culture or whatever. You could have someone who's very professional and they're not so happy about saying that they don't know that much about writing job ads. So there's also something about that, I think, in what I see in my daily work.
Maybe if I could add, I absolutely agree about the prestige part. I have yet to see a talent acquisition where the interest in doing better job ad has come from the top. It needs to come either from the leaders, the hiring managers, or from the TA function itself. But there is no pressure from the top to do better job ads. There may be a pressure or an expectation from the top to work AI into recruitment, or to improve your sourcing, or to cut back on your spend on external vendors. But there is never a pressure from the top. Then on top of that, I think if you ask heads of talent acquisition what is not working, they would usually argue that talent acquisition partners, they lack 3 things. They lack skill. Talent acquisition partners, they're not hired. They're not trained to be good copywriters. They also maybe lack interest. It's not the interest in writing job ads that take you into talent acquisition. It's usually the interest to sit down with candidates and with managers and do the face-to-face interviewing. And then I would also say that certainly that's what I hear from heads of talent acquisition, that talent acquisition partners, they lack time. They're overworked, they're under-resourced. So there's a question of skill, there's a question of interest, there's a question of time. But I think, to follow up on Ricki's point, I think there's an important element of prestige, and maybe job ads being overwhelmed by some of the more strategic initiatives within employer branding, AI, tech, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. And maybe I think there's a lot of conversation about AI, as you mentioned as well. There's a lot of. We just also in this podcast have talked to people who are, talking about we should get rid of the CV, we should get rid of the motivational letter, we have to use AI or not use AI. There's a lot of here. So is the job ad still relevant? Do you see that in 5 years we still use the job ad?
In the way that I think job ads, yes, meaning that it is a description of what you're actually going to do in the job. So it might as well be a working description that leads to a job ad. And I think if you don't have that, you don't really have anything to, even if you're sourcing the candidates. So a lot of people say, well, we don't apply for people in this way. We'll find them on LinkedIn. You still need to know what are they going to do in the job. So I think, and the lack of time, I'd like to follow up on that one. Most hiring managers need the employee last week or last month or last year. So spending just adding on extra time, let's just say 2-3 days, maybe a week, making a good job at, they don't find that necessary. It's not a thing that they're like, okay, let's just spend an extra week on writing the good job ad.
No, not an option.
Not an option. We're missing an employee, probably missing that person for a while. So let's just get down to business and get some CVs, some candidates, give me someone at an interview, so there's the speed. You mentioned time, but also the speed. We like to really keep up the speed, and job ads will slow things down.
Yeah.
I would also love to be the cynic in the room here. I think there's a lot of misleading talk in talent acquisition about how the world is changing. Everything is changing and changing rapidly. I think if you look at job ads, that's a terrible misconception, and maybe it's even a lie. If you look at job ads today and you compare that to job ads 10 to 20 years ago, it is pretty much the same. You throw in a couple of sentences, you have a header, you throw in a couple of sentences about the job itself, maybe the purpose of the job. You add a little something about the requirements, and then you maybe have a selling point or two, and at the bottom you have a boilerplate with a company profile. That's what job ads looked like when I started working in talent acquisition 20 years ago, and that's what they look like today. That also involves that I absolutely think that job ads have a role to play in recruitment also in 5 years, as long as we're working in a practice where most recruitment is filling specific open positions with specific candidates. If we start working with pipelining or, different ways of sourcing candidates, it may be a different situation. But as long as the vast majority of recruitment is about filling specific positions with specific candidates, I think job ads have a role to play as Ricki was also getting at in the beginning, as a sort of expectations management between candidates and employers.
I think it's very interesting because one thing that you focus on, Ricki, is the clarity of the job itself. Do our job ad communicates clearly what it is what's your goals and what are your tasks. But again, as a copywriter, we also talk about the wording, the communications, the structure of the job post, the headline, so on. Can we also have a misconception that the best job post now is the most, quirky one, like it just has to be fun or different, then it's a good job post? Would that also be a misconception that could lead people into writing, job posts they believe will be good, but in fact it's just now, bad in a different way?
Yes.
Okay.
I understand your question.
Yeah.
I remember once at a very big public company in Denmark, I was writing job ads, and they were putting on these very nice photos, and they really work with the language and everything. And when they hired the candidates and they entered the company, it was completely different. So most company has a tone of voice in their marketing and everything they have, and that should be in the job ads as well. So you shouldn't go out and just really get what you mentioned. You called it cocky or
cocky or quirky.
Yeah. you just need to have the tone of the voice of the company. But what I think Ole and I, and maybe he's not agree, is I think we'll agree that the language has to be simple, easy to read. So some companies also put in too many difficult words and make it hard to read. Most people read a job ad in 15, 30. It's an ad. So you'll spend maybe 15, 30 seconds on the ad. So it has to be very, very simple, but still in the tone of voice of the company.
I have seen cases of companies that have tried to sort of disrupt or circumvent, some of the conventions, the genre conventions of job ads. I've seen companies do job ads as a diary, as a poem, as a performed song by a company band, for example. The disadvantage, and it has a certain appeal, especially when other job ads look the same. The disadvantage is that it's a one-off. You can do it once, but you can't do it for scale. So by my experience, it doesn't really work for bigger corporates that hire at scale and maybe need to do thousands of job ads, every year. You need a certain conventionality to be able to cope with that kind of scale.
But just to elaborate on that, because that is a really important point, right? That is, we all agree, and also candidates that don't come from TA, they all agree that most job ads are boring. But there is a difference between taking job ads and making them better and then saying we need to make them different. We need to change the entire way we structure it. And what do you two see? Are we going in a direction where we need to do it differently? Or are we going in a direction where we need to just do it better?
While Ricki is trying to think of an answer, I would go with the latter. I would do it better instead of doing it differently. I think if you flip things, it's a little like the usual question of how to do a CV. Do you go by conventions or do you break conventions? There are a lot of candidates that want to try to sort of change that convention and maybe doing unconventional CVs. But the reality of the situation is that most talent acquisition partners prefer relatively conventional CVs. Vice versa. With the job ads. So from my perspective, it's more a question of improving the quality and do better, as opposed to doing radically different.
And I would say the employer branding you could do very differently. So I've seen some very good examples. You also mentioned some of those. There was a company who had a video where all the employees told all the terrible things about their CEO of the company, and it's a 1-minute video, and then it comes, we have a lot of open positions. So you could do, if you really want to flip things, you should lift it up to employer branding and then say, but then we have these 5-10 positions, and then you would make those very clear, very easy to read, and very simple for the ones who is going to apply for it. Make it simpler to apply. Yeah.
Thanks.
I like it. One question that I keep coming back to, because I also work, of course, with a lot of companies and I read a lot of job adverts every single day. There's a lot of money being poured into LinkedIn. You mentioned it before, Nicklas, right? I mean, they're spending a lot of money on getting that job advert out there, putting into screening, sourcing, assessment. A lot of, if we just take the entire funnel, there's a lot of money being funneled in there. So why do we accept that the base of it, the job ad, the foundation of the house, is rotten? Why do you think that is?
I think it's the points that Ole mentioned before. You had 3 points, but basically it's just, this is not why recruiters are in the game. They're not in the game to write job ads. The managers, hiring managers, not in the game for job ads. They're looking for candidates. If you look to the top, to the CEOs or the board or whatever, not an area of interest. So it's it's and it's someone asked me a while ago, said, so you actually wrote a book about something that people really don't have any interest in. And I was like, yes, definitely. But the ones who actually take it seriously, they get a very, very different recruitment process. So when they actually give just a little bit of time and a little bit of money, the recruitment process will change completely.
Yeah.
But having said that, it's a super relevant question. But I would argue from a cost-benefit perspective that the job ads are an obvious place to invest your effort. I would argue that you can make relatively significant impact on relatively limited effort if you nail it. You don't need to aim for perfect, but if you just aim for average or good, half decent, you can have relatively significant impact on what I consider a relatively limited effort. So having that perspective is maybe also what can sort of turn the tables in terms of prioritization.
Because it will literally take you maybe half an hour or an hour, and you would do so much better than everyone else in the business.
Yeah.
So you asked me earlier about my book. When I started writing my book, I wrote 250 pages. I read the whole book. It was ready for printing, and I was like, no one's going to read this.
Yeah.
So I changed it for a guidebook, and there are also very good guides online and everything. And if you just follow a very good guide and spend maybe an hour extra on writing the job ad, you would just as you mentioned, Ole, just be an average. You would do better than everyone else because no one is writing good job ads. So you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be 100%. Just be 20%, and you're better off than anyone else.
Yeah.
So let's go into that. The pillars of the good job ad.
Yeah.
What are the, like, for the listeners out there? What would be the things you should have in mind when designing your job ad?
Well, if I were to begin, I would say that rule number one is to build your job ad on a good understanding of the role. So without a good analysis of the role, the requirements, the market, I think you're in a poor position to write a good job ad. So it's more than copywriting. It's also basic recruiter skills. And then what we also talk about is maybe having 5 basic ingredients. You need the kind of clarity that Ricki talked about. It needs to be obvious to the candidate what exactly you're hiring for. You need to have engagement, maybe have selling points that create a kind of sense of belonging with the role and the company already when reading job ads. You need inclusion to avoid the risk of excluding candidates. You need to be on brand. Your employer value proposition needs to be there. You need to see your company tone of voice reflected in the job ad, also to guarantee flexibility or credibility. And then I think maybe to say the obvious that your job ads need to stay compliant. This is important today. It's going to be even more important next year with the EU Pay Transparency Directive, with expected requirements to actually put the job salary in the job ad. So doing your groundwork, understanding the role and the requirements and the market, that's a basic from my perspective. And then having clarity, engagement, inclusion, being on brand, and then having job ads that stay compliant with regulatory requirements. If you do that, I think you're you're all set for at least doing good.
Yeah. And if anyone is listening who's like, okay, I need a recipe for doing it, I can be very specific. First of all, why should I work in your company? That's the question. If I come to a job interview, someone will ask me, so why this company? Why do I want to work here? But the company hasn't asked themselves this question. That's the first thing you put in the ad. Why should you work here? Secondly, what are you going to do? In prioritized order, your task number 1, which maybe 50% of the time is this. This is your goal, target, expectations, whatever it might be. And maybe you just have 2 or 3 things. This is your tasks. So you know exactly what are you going to do. Number 3, what skills do you need, if not obvious when listing the task? Is it just 2 or 3 things where you're like, this is what we're looking for? Most recruiters go through a CV, LinkedIn, whatever, and they look for 2 or 3 things. Write them in a job ad. This is, if you don't have these 3 skills, don't apply. That will change the market completely if companies were to do that. Right now, you have like, here's up to 50. I can count in most job ads between 30 and 50 skills. Soft, hard, call them what you want, but different skills. Instead of just saying, we're looking for 3 skills. And then that's the 3 basic things. So why should you work here? What are the tasks? What are the skills to actually do these tasks, if not obvious? Then you can talk about some of the other things. How's management in our company? Which team are you going to be a part of, maybe? Or how is the team spirit, or whatever you call it? How is the company? What's the culture? So you can talk about all these other things, but just do these 3 things. Why do you work here? 3 tasks, 3 skills. You're all set for writing the best job ads in Denmark at the moment.
Can I use Copilot for that?
No, because the recruiters are extremely good at asking questions, and they need to ask the questions to the hiring manager and keep asking to get to the center of the job. I can try and give you an example of a job ad that I wrote where the recruitment process changed completely. It was a food company. They produce food. They have these giant machines that produce food. I don't know much about it. They had a terrible manager, and they needed a new manager. And one of the things the ad says, the skill you needed, was that you needed to be educated as a butcher. I think there are very good managers that can be educated as butchers out there, probably. But I was like, why is that a skill?
That's required for the...
That's required for the job, because when I kept asking the questions, and I couldn't use AI for that, and kept asking the question, so what is this person going to do? They had a terrible manager, so they need a new manager who could create some psychological safety, very popular word right now, and just make people feel valued. That's the job. That's 90% of the job. Do well as a manager. Make sure they work with this machine the way that you should. You just need to be a very good manager. And the reason that the whole thing changed is that we don't need a butcher. And we start looking through all the skills that they mentioned in the paper they wrote. Yeah, the wish list. We started removing things because they're like, that's not the important part. So we could narrow it down to just 2, 3 very, very simple things. And AI cannot do that because AI doesn't have the skills to keep asking the right questions to get the right answers. You need a person to do that. And that is one of the things that recruiters are extremely good at. So that's also why I'm quite surprised they don't write better job ads, because in human resource, everyone I meet is good at asking questions. That's the skill, correct me if I'm wrong, that I think all people that I meet that work with people are good at. They're good at asking questions. They're curious.
But do they take the time, Ole? Could that be one issue, that is the entire intake meeting is being skipped? Because, well, we have hired this role before because we had the replacement, or the person leaving was hired 2 years ago. So why don't you just take the old job ad and dust it off? Could that be one of the issues? Again, back to time.
I'm absolutely sure that it is. And I think it's both the time of the talent acquisition partner and the time of the hiring manager. I think if you sat down with almost all talent acquisition partners, from a theoretical perspective, they would understand the true value of the intake meeting. We all agree on this. This is important, and it's absolutely key to making good recruitment. This is key. Yet it rarely happens the way that it's intended for different reasons. But I think time is an obvious factor. So you compromise on quality either you can't find time in the talent acquisition partners calendar, or you can't find time in the leaders calendar. Leaders are impatient people. They want job ads to get out there. And when I hear, as I do frequently, about job ads that are being posted and intake meetings happening after the publication of the job ad, that's an absolute nightmare. This happens on a regular basis, and then damage has happened. That's the reality.
And we will go back to in a little bit more into that. But before we do that, because we're running out of time actually already, but I want to touch upon the initiative that I know the two of you have, because I'm part of it as well. And for anyone who has been also following you a little bit on LinkedIn and see what you're talking about, you've started a new initiative as well on getting the best job ads out there. Because it is easy for us to sit here and tell everyone who is listening that your job ads are really bad, right? Because we know they are. We know they're bad. And there's a lot of that on LinkedIn as well for anyone following the conversation. So the new initiative in Danish is called Den jordnære Ole. How would you translate it again, Ole? You said it before.
Well, I think the jury is still out, but if I were to make a conclusion based on a discussion that we had seconds before going into this recording, let's call it the grounded owl. Grounded because in job ads, being down to earth, specific, clear, that's a good thing. An owl, because that's a wise animal. So the combination make, in English, the grounded owl. And it is, as you're saying, Pyrdol, we're basically trying on a quarterly basis to find the best job ad published in Denmark. We're still on quarter one.
When this comes out, it'll be quarter two.
Yeah, but we're still trying to find it for the first time. Okay, so we're still getting up and running. But the backdrop from my perspective is that we can all agree that job ads need improvement. But it's also my perspective that a lot of TA functions know that they need to improve. And I also see a lot of TA functions that are in the process of improving. So it's not as if nothing happens. There are TA teams that are actually making a genuine effort and are putting this on their priority. So part of what we want to do with this initiative is also to honor and to create a little buzz and visibility around those important initiatives, because there are some movers and shakers that are actually trying to do things better. So that we also want to honor.
Yeah. Why is it important, Ricki, you think, in your...
It's important because if you can see something that's good, you can try and do some of the same. So if you see all the bad job ads and just copy those, it'll just keep being bad. But if we can just show, let's just say 3 or 5 very good job ads who has all the things that we talked about today, people or TAs can look at this and say, okay, and get some good ideas, get some inspiration. That's what everyone is looking for. We talked about time, so no one is going to invent something new, but it's just seeing 3-5 good ads was like, okay, we could do some of that, and that's a way to improve. So that's why I really love the initiative, because good examples is good for everyone.
And everyone can nominate good job adverts and sending them along. They can also go and follow it on LinkedIn, of course. It's a completely volunteer project, so there's nothing associated with that, but we really want to put out the good examples here. And here at the end, I really want to hear the equation. I'm excited. Are you excited for it?
I'm very excited about the equation, yeah.
So Ole and Ricki, you may or may not agree. You don't have to. What is the equation for the good job ad? What are the pillars making up the good job ad?
Should I give it a shot? Yeah. And then you can add, and then you can multiply at the end. Maybe.
Yeah. You're the good strategic, so maybe if you start up, I'll.
Or maybe we'll flip roles. Who
Let's
knows?
See what happens. Let's see what happens.
I will start with a thorough analysis as the base.
Yeah.
Then I'll mix into that 5 ingredients. I want to mix clarity, engagement, inclusion, being on brand, and compliance. that equals a good job ad. If you want to aim for a greater job ad, then maybe you add a little creativity, you add a little linguistic playfulness, you try to manipulate to a certain limitation the genre, and then maybe you're in a position where you can multiply good with, let's say, 1.5, and I think that's your equation, and that is possibly what makes great.
Yeah. I'll give you my hack. Ask the one leaving the job, ask that person to write the ad. And make sure that they're specific on why should you work here, what are the tasks, maybe just one task, and then which skills are needed. How is it to work here, culture and everything. Ask someone who's been there, maybe for a year, maybe for 2, doesn't matter if you fired them or they stopped themselves. Most people that leave a job would like to say, what is it that I'm leaving on my table for someone else? So that would be the equation for me, just to keep it very simple. Why should I work here? What's the main task? What's the main skill?
Wonderful. I think mixing that up, I think it's really good leaving our listeners with that. Anything you want to add, Nicklas?
Oh, that's perfect.
Right?
I love that.
I love ending on this. Thank you so much for joining, both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a great co-host, Nicklas.
Likewise,
It's
people.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.